folks. Welcome to another episode of the Dream Big podcast with Bob Goff and friends. I'm your co-host, Scott Schimmel, and I'm here virtually with Bob Goff.
Hey, everybody, and I'm so glad to be with you. And Scott, who do we have this week? I can't wait for you guys to hear.
We have a really special guest. It's Lauren Akins, who's the wife of Thomas Rhett Akins. For those of you who aren't a country music fan like me and my wife, maybe you're not familiar with Thomas Rhett, but he's a big deal. He's a big deal in the country music industry. And he and his wife are a big deal because they are just profoundly filled with love.
Yeah, we became friends a number of years ago. One of the things that Lauren and Thomas Rhett are really good at is loving people. And they love their family. They love the people that are near them. And so one of the things that sprung to mind during this time of a lot of transition for people as they're trying to sort things out is to put just different friends in front of them that have taken their ambitions and they've led them beyond their households to further away places. But then what they've done, and you'll listen in, what they've done is they've taken these things back into their households. Like, how could you love your neighbor that's far away? And so I think the common thread for all of us is we want lives filled with purpose and connection. We want to leave a legacy of love behind. And Thomas Rhett and Lauren have done just a beautiful job at that.
Yeah, so as you're listening, pay attention to your own heart. Lauren is somebody that I find to be someone who's really attentive and awake and conscious of not only what's happening out in the world, but also with what's happening in our own heart. And I know during these days when so much of us are locked in and shut down and we're not able to get out into the world, it can feel like Groundhog Day. It can feel like we're just going through the motions, that today is just another day. But Lauren is someone that can remind me and remind you that something is happening. God is up to something. He's speaking, and he just might be speaking to you. So enjoy this conversation between Bob Goff and Lauren Akins.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for making time to be on the podcast. Tell me how you're doing. This is crazy times.
Oh, thanks for having me. We're good. Honestly, I joke with people, but I'm really serious. This is like a dream come true for me because I'm such a homebody and we travel so much, and I always am longing for the days where we're all home together and we can be alone sometimes. And that's just been a lot of what we've been doing, home together, not always alone. We had my sister and her husband and then my best friend quarantine with us for almost 40 days.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like biblical. Were you eating like locusts and manna and stuff?
We might as well. We were, honestly, it was awesome. Everybody was like, y'all have got to be so tired of each other by now. And I was like, I mean, when they left, it was kind of sad, but it was good. We needed some family time with just us five for a little bit. It's been, I've really enjoyed it, honestly. Thomas Rhett's been working from downstairs, and he jokes that he might not ever go back on the road because
I know I could
accomplish so much from my downstairs studio.
I saw that twinkle in his eye. Like, he wasn't kidding when he said, like, I think there's going to be a lot of concerts that are going to be bummed out. But as he's like piping in from the basement, but this has been kind of like proof of concept. Like, all of us that have been moving around a lot I wonder if we could do what we do and not be elsewhere. And the answer is Earth just told us yes.
Yeah, it's truly, I feel like so much. I was talking to one of my girlfriends and they were like, you know what? It's amazing how much I think the earth needed this too. It was just for everyone to be home and be calm and be indoors, and even for the earth to heal itself a little bit, but then for us and our families, like, it's amazing how much you are gone at nights, just doing little things, even things that maybe aren't even on your schedule month to month, but how little families gather together and they're just home together. It's truly unbelievable. And the difference, it's such a stark difference from the last 9 weeks or so for us. And then before, we were still on the go, and I was really pregnant. We were moving into a new house, but the world, did not slow down. And this has just forced everyone to slow down. And I really hope that people will change the way they live in a good way once all of this is behind us. Like going out for walks in your neighborhood is a good thing, and meeting your neighbors for the first time is a good thing, and staying home and cooking dinner, even if you're not a good cook, just exploring different dinner options is a good thing. And I burnt the fire out of an asparagus dish one night, but you know what? We had a lot of fun cooking it and we laughed about it. But just all the things that we've gotten to do has been so sweet. And I hope that we don't lose that once we're able to go out about and move around. I hope that we don't lose how sweet this time was too.
Yeah, we tell our friends when they come up to Canada to just change the pace. And I told them just count the waterfalls. And there's 50 waterfalls. And so if somebody says I counted 10 waterfalls, I'm like, you're going too fast. So it's like you can kind of see, you can see the cadence in your life by how many waterfalls you see. And you'll actually see some beauty in one another, in the kids. And so tell the folks that aren't aware of this new addition, your family got a little bit bigger recently.
We did. So we just had our third daughter, Lennon. She was born right before Valentine's Day on February 10th. And so she's our third. We have two other daughters. Our first, Willa Gray, she's 4, and she's from Uganda. And then Ada James is our 2-year-old, and she is just a little spitfire. I mean, she is crazy town all the time. But we have so much fun. They're so sweet together. They all have very different personalities. But it has been so fun. I mean, it is like one princess runway show after another at this house. Princess dresses and crowns, and they're learning their curtsy, and they curtsy everywhere they go now. And it's so.
Oh, nice. I like when our kids were growing up, we would have good manners night. So they would learn how to pull out chairs and serve on the left, pick up on the right. And then once they'd master that, then we would have bad manners night. And we would ultimately end up in a food fight. Somebody would have sloppy Joe in their hair and all that. And so when you thought of the curtsy, I'm thinking of the other side of that, because I know you guys are full of fun. But when we've talked about in Dream Big, we've talked about ambitions, ambitions for our neighbors, ambitions for the world. We do things, you and I, in faraway places, but Jesus always talked about, instead of the ends of the earth, just go to the end of your street. Just find the people right here. And to your point, this idea of slowing down, yet you're doing things and have been for years overseas. Tell us a little bit about that. What have you been doing?
Yeah. So one of my really good friends, Suzanne Marinick, she was the co-founder of 147 Million Orphans, which later turned to Love One International. And that's the organization that I'm on the board. And so I met her through a college friend, and just on a whim, he was actually living in Turkey at the time and came back and said, listen, the Lord just keeps putting on my heart that you need to meet my aunt, Suzanne. And I was like, man, that is really an odd request. You're coming all the way home from Turkey, and that's all you can talk about is me meeting your aunt. So I took him up on it. I sent an email out, and they were going to Haiti the next month. And they had lost a nurse was signed up to go, and I guess she backed out. And so they needed one more. And I had just finished nursing school a couple years prior. And so she was like, yeah, come on. And I was like, wow, okay, well, I've never met any of y'all. I've never been to a third world country, but you know what? I feel like this is the Lord just opening doors. And so I went. So I went to Haiti in September, I think, of that year, which was 2014. Goodness gracious, I'm trying to remember. But it was like a shell shock for me. For years, I'd always dreamed about going to a different country and serving, and I've seen friends doing it, and I grew up in church and youth group, and I loved doing camps and retreats and getting to love on people. And through all of that, I met a lot of people who traveled and were able to serve people and love people across the world. And so getting to go to Haiti was a dream of mine for sure. I just never thought it was going to be possible. I just figured I would growing up with the family that in the life that I had, that's an expensive thing to go do, to travel across the world. And so I think in my little mind growing up, I never, I didn't know that it was okay to dream that big. And I didn't think it was a reality, honestly. And so when this came up and I went with Suzanne for the first time, it was like I was stepping into one of my dreams all of a sudden. And I will never forget meeting a little boy on one of the first days of clinical. And he was a little Haitian boy, and I saw his face. And when he walked up to me for me to take his temperature and get his vitals, I will never forget looking at him and seeing my brother. So I have a little brother who was about his age at the time. And when I looked into his eyes, it was like I saw my brother. And I had to walk out of the room. Suzanne was outside, kind of overseeing everything. And she came over to me and she said, "Are you okay?" And I just lost it. I just started weeping right there. And she was like, "Okay, you're okay." And she said, "Tell me what's going on." And I was like, I just cannot believe this is some people's realities. This is the way they live. And they don't know where their next meal is coming from. And this little boy, I was told, walks about 3 miles one way just to come get a meal, come to school because he knows he's going to get a meal. And it was a really heavy moment for me, but it shifted the way I saw the world and my purpose in the world, because about the same time my husband's career in the music industry was really taking off. And so we were able to have me stay home from work. I never actually went and worked in a hospital, so I was able to travel with him on the road when we first got married. And then it was also about the same time that I was really asking God to give me something for me in my life, because I just felt like I was following him on his career, and I really felt like I could make a difference doing something else. Maybe that's not the same path as Thomas Rhett's. And so this trip came up, and after seeing that little boy and seeing my brother in his face, I always thought, like, who knows? What if that was my little brother? What if he had been born in a different country and he was having to walk 3 miles just to get a meal? And I would hope that somebody would love the world enough to travel to take care of my little brother. Yeah. And so that really just lit a fire under me. And so on our way back home on the airplane, I told Suzanne, I said, "Listen, I don't know what this looks like, but whenever you go to serve anywhere, when you book a flight, book me one too. I want to be
so good."
And she goes, "Lauren, are you sure?" She's like, "This life looks a lot different than red carpets and 5-star restaurants and wining and dining." And I said, "I know, but like this is what makes my heart happy. Like, this is where I feel full and like truly where the Lord has me." And she said, "Okay, I mean, if you're into it," she said, "I will book you a flight anytime I book one, sister." I was like, "Okay." And so she said, "Well, you know where we're going next, don't you?" And I was like, "No." And she goes, "We're going to Uganda."
Yeah, you are.
So we went to Uganda in April. It was the first time I went in 2016. This was fast forward, a little bit later. And I met Willa Gray. She was 5 months old. She was one of the little babies in the children's home we were serving at the time. And my husband and I had been trying to have kids. I think we were, let's see, if that was 2016, we got married in 2012. So it'd been about 4 years. And we were like, yeah, I think we're ready to start a family. And so we'd been trying, still hadn't gotten pregnant. And, but we had a lot of friends back home who were they wanted to adopt. And so I met this little girl, and she was adoptable. She was a true orphan in need of a family. And so I saw where a family was going to form with her. I just knew that her future was not that children's home. And so I called Thomas Rhett and I said, "Hey, listen, there's a baby here, and I know that I'm supposed to help her find her home."
That must have been a crazy call.
Well, so Thomas Rhett's like, "Really?" And so he's talking to me about this little girl. He'd seen a picture of her. And I said, "Babe, I know that this is not her forever home. Like we can help find her home." And without even hesitating, he said, we'll do it. He said, we'll bring her home. And I was like, what? Like, on FaceTime where it's really patchy in Uganda, trying to like, I'm sorry, did the phone just mess up? Did you really just say that? And then I kind of started panicking, and I was like, wait a second. We haven't even talked this through. We haven't talked through what this is going to look like for our family, for her. I mean, you're on the road traveling. And it was definitely a moment where I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, or even just stepping out in faith. I was petrified because it was something I didn't know anything about really. My mom is adopted, but domestically, and international is a whole different ball game. And Uganda even is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, talk about starting in the most complex place ever, 18,000 miles away. Yet, one of the themes that's kind of emerging is that you see an opportunity, you take the next step, not all the steps, and then you haven't lived a life that's binary. You didn't have to pick all of what you were doing with touring or this. And somehow I think a lot of people think that there's no middle where you get to pick both. But I just love that you said yes to it. Even though you didn't have it figured out, you must have had some reservations, but you just pushed through them.
Yeah, I think through my life consistently, the themes have been, and I tried to live by this, so I try to speak it as much as I can. As the Lord opens a door in front of me, I'm going to walk through it. And I want to keep, because through each door he's taken me through has been an amazing life, such a beautiful life and beautiful opportunities. And yes, a lot of heartache, but also I can see his hand in all of it and the beauty of who he is. And I can just see the grace of Jesus throughout my entire life. And it's truly because when he's opened that door, like I don't have the answers, and it may seem really scary. And some people even may have really good points as to why I shouldn't walk through it. But I feel like I'm being disobedient to him if he's leading me to a door and I don't say yes.
Yeah, there's something so good about that. I was thinking as you were saying that about Deuteronomy, that idea of just to remember what God's done to you when you wake up in the morning, when you're walking by the way, when you lie down, just keep track. So if you're listening and you can find a wide spot in the road, just pull over. Don't try to do this in traffic, and write down all the good things that have happened, all the times God has shown up before. And then when an opportunity comes along and it might look like a little child, you go like, oh my gosh, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I do know this. I know that God has shown up before. And when I shuffle my feet forward, I think some people are thinking God is going to back up an 18-wheeler to the front door and unload everything all at once. And sometimes we get it just an envelope at a time.
Oh, yeah. Or something that looks like there's no way we're making it past this. Like, this is a dead bolted door. We are not getting through this door. And then he just swings it wide open when you least expect it, I feel like. And it's just, it's never a dull moment. I can say that. I feel like it is life to the fullest when you're letting him lead you, because I mean, only he can come up with the beautiful life that I have right now with my children and my husband and where we are. And if I had planned it, it would be so much more dull.
Yeah, because you'd play it safe. You'd say you just do things that are reasonable and logical and all that. And so just so encouraged that it's not a business trip that we've been invited on. It's this adventure. And it takes you to Haiti and it takes you to Uganda. And then more kids start showing up. I mean, what's up with that?
All of a sudden our house is full.
Yes.
Yeah. So through the adoption, we found out we were pregnant with Ada James. And once again, I was kind of like, okay, God, we haven't really accomplished all that we were trying to with the first just yet. And now number 2 is coming along. And it was a lot. I was really, really sick. And then the law in Uganda is you have to foster to adopt for a year. And so I was having to be over there as much as I could. And Thomas Rhett wasn't able to because he was on the tour. And so my mom would come with me a lot. Occasionally Thomas Rhett would get to come over and stay with me for a bit, but it felt lonely. Um, it felt really lonely. And also it felt like my life was going on without me back home. Like when Thomas Rhett, I'll never forget, he played one of his first big shows in Nashville, and I was in Uganda, and I had everyone under the sun calling me, being like, "Hey, are you here? Are you here?" And I was like, "No, y'all, I'm in Uganda, and it is like 3 a.m, or I don't know, it was in the middle of
Yeah.
the night they were calling me." And I was just so bummed that it was so much was happening, and Thomas Rhett wasn't able to be there with me for so much of Willa Gray's adoption. And it was a lot emotionally to process, on top of pregnancy hormones, and then just not knowing the unknown of Willa Gray. You know, like, are they going to grant this adoption? Because they don't have to. What does it look like? And our court dates kept getting moved, and we kept getting what felt like doors shut in our face everywhere we turned. And it was still a secret. You know, we weren't publicly letting anyone know that we were adopting her. So we were having to keep it on the down low that I was over there. And no one knew I was pregnant for a really long time. It was really, really hard. But looking back, she came home on May 11th, which was just a few days ago. And so it's been 3 years since she's come home. And when that day comes around every year, I think about her coming home a lot. But like that day, it was just like my whole life had been for that one day, just to get my baby to our home, and for the world to get to see her story. And I think honestly, it was so good for me to grow up in an adopted family that was so healthy, and it was so normal. And I think now, with the platform that my husband and I have, so many people are getting to see an adoption story lived out. And, you know, granted, they're not in our living room every day seeing everything that goes on, but you get to see quite a bit from socials, and we're pretty open about who we are and our story. And then my book goes into a lot of that detail as well.
Yeah, we've got to talk about that for a second. I want to talk about your book, but I just want to pause before we move on. You're listening and you feel like, that's great, Lauren's story, how that worked for her, but you have an ambition. It hasn't come to pass yet. You have a lot of uncertainty, might feel super lonely in it. Just another encouragement along the way to stay the course. Those times where you must have just felt so achingly lonely, and then to people that are super well-intentioned saying some things that as innocent as "are you here," but then it's like, "Oh, you're slaying me," not just because it's 3 a.m, but you're reminding me I'm 18,000 miles away. One of the things that's been super helpful for me, maybe it'll help if you're listening, is to ask myself, what do I want? Why do I want it? And what am I going to do about it? And so each day, that's kind of the ritual I go, like, what do I want? And I don't want a convertible. I actually want some purpose in my life. And so to drill down on that, so what does purpose look like for you? So it might be adopting a child. It might be meeting a neighbor. It could be ginormous, and it can be really simple and attainable. But then why do you want it? Do you want that for, validation, acceptance, connection, whatever it is, but just get super real about that, and then decide what you're going to do about it, even the tough stuff. So I'm going to move to Uganda for the better part of a year. Like, yikes. Well, so you wrote all these things down, and you got a book coming out in August, I think. Tell us about it.
So it is truly just a book telling my story, hoping that whoever's reading it can relate to a lot of the stories and a lot of what I've gone through, or what my heart experienced as a kid, as a friend, as a mom, as a wife, as just a woman, or even just a person, just living life that can be hard sometimes. I'm hoping that if people can read the book and find themselves in the story somewhere, they won't feel so isolated in maybe a tough time that they're going through, or even just to laugh a little, because there are some funny things and there are some sweet things, and then things end really well, and then some things are ongoing, and but I think it's healthy for people to see the ups and downs of our life, because when people look at us from the outside looking in, it looks like we have it all together. It looks like we have the perfect marriage. It looks like we have the perfect family, and our life has been so easy. And that's not reality for anybody. And I think another part of why I wanted to share my story this way was to let people know that nobody just gets their life handed to them, and it's not always pretty. And I think it's something that the world needs to hear right now, because especially with social media, it's so easy to look at someone's life and compare and feel like, well, look what they've got going on. I'll never have that. Or I can't believe she got so and so. That's not fair. Or, I always say that comparison is the thief of your joy. And I feel like that's so much of the world we live in right now, is a lot of comparison. And so I'm hoping with my story that it's able to shed some light on the reality of anyone's life, and how everyone feels down. Everyone feels defeated. Everyone feels joy. Everyone feels like they've got it all together, just to, a little bit later, it all come crashing down. It's a roller coaster. It really is.
One of the things I've appreciated in our friendship is the word that comes to mind for both you and Thomas Rhett is authenticity. You're just really authentic people. You're the same on the surface that you are 50 feet down. And I think what ends up isolating us is if we have two lives that we're living, there's the real one, and then there's the one that we're projecting. And so the one, you don't see a Facebook post with somebody turning around 10 feet from the summit. You don't see somebody doing a big epic fail in front of everybody, but instead we have this tug, this back and forth where like we live these conflicted lives. So it's like Romans 7. I keep wanting to do this, but I keep doing that. I keep not wanting to do this, but that's the exact thing I'm doing. And I just think a lot of people are going to enjoy the book. And I hope if you're listening and you're feeling isolated or lonely, I'm not giving you Lauren's telephone number, but you can call me anytime you want, because I just don't want you. I'm not looking for new best friends. I just want you to not be alone, and you can just reach out or find somebody even better in your friend group. I know you have a small group of friends that you just go a mile deep with. Just talk just briefly about what that's meant to you to have a core of people that are around you that you can do life with.
It's huge. I mean, and I think so much of this quarantine has also showed me that like we are built for community. As much as I've loved being home and having this time with my family, I really have missed our community. And I'll be ready whenever that time comes for us to be able to hang out again. But yeah, even going back through the adoption and just anything in life, I have what I call my prayer warriors. And, when I was going through those isolating times where I felt like my faith was really weak, I think just having that core group that you can open up with and say, hey, I'm not doing good right now, or I don't have the courage to pray these bold prayers right now, or I don't have the energy, or when you're really, really down, I think that's when your community comes in and lifts you up better than ever. And I joke, but actually dead serious. I laugh about it and put little pink emojis when Willa Gray came home all around it. But truly, my prayer warriors brought my baby home. Yeah. I mean, when I felt like I couldn't pray those prayers anymore and I was so discouraged, I would tell them, like, I need y'all to lift this situation up, and y'all have faith in this, because today my faith, I feel like, is really struggling. And they did, and they were so encouraging. And I think, their faith in lifting up my child and our family truly brought Willa Gray home.
Yeah.
And now translating into, I guess we got 3 kids now. Who knows what the future is going to hold, but now we've got our small group. There's 12 of us, and we meet once a week. Lately it's been on Zoom. We're really, really missing our friends face to face, but they're our life partners. You know, when we've got a crazy something going on, we share it with them, whether it's good, bad, any and all in between. We just do our life with them. And I think community is just one of the most powerful gifts that we've ever been given. And I couldn't do my life without community. And our community is so special, but it's huge. And I just think that's a huge part of my book too, is talking about our built-in community. And what I would encourage anyone listening to, like, if you don't have that strong community, that should be next on your prayer list. Is to, like, find that group of people that you feel like you can share your life with and be vulnerable with, and that will pray with you and encourage you and speak life into you and your family. And it's one of the coolest things I've gotten to witness on this earth, is watching the transition from when we were early starting out in a small group till now, the prayers that have been answered, the miracles that have happened. And it's so much fun. And I want everyone to get to have that.
And here's the crazy part. Everybody has access to it. There might be people listening right now saying, well, that's great for you. You have your friends in that group and I don't. And I'm telling you, don't make a list, make a call. Because you get to actually receive that, to say, let's just go for 3 minutes and keep it super real about what's going on, and not talk about the way we wish we were or life turned out, but the way it's feeling right now. Sometimes, because I'm an enthusiastic guy, people think I'm the balloon guy, I'm the happy guy. And actually, I can get really sad. And sometimes I'm super lonely if I'm apart from Sweet Maria. I get like super lonely. And then what I try to do, because I don't want to make people feel bad, is I just try to act cheery because I don't want them to be bummed. I don't want to. But if you walk around always doing that and you don't have somebody that you can say, I'm a really pretty upbeat guy, but I'm actually kind of a little sad right now. And you could just unapologetically say, this is where I am, and I'm feeling separated from friends or family or whatever, and find somebody. You can just do it in little sips, kind of like put a toe in the water and then get up to your ankles and then your knees, and then you're going to be swimming, not sinking. And so the only way to not just take my word for it is a try. So pull over the car if you aren't pulled over already, and just phone a number. Don't say I'm going to do when I get home. You pull over right now. Actually, you are home right now. So actually make the phone call. You shouldn't be out driving. But make the phone call and just start today. Flag in the sand. Lauren, I'm so grateful for you. Hugs to the entire family. Thank you for living love just in such a beautiful way and authentic way. And that's just super encouraging to so many of us. So hugs from Sweet Maria too, to the whole fam.
Thank you. Hugs back from the Akins. We love y'all.
All right, Bob, one thing that struck me in the conversation is something that Lauren said. She said, growing up, I didn't know it was okay to dream that big. And looking at her life, her life seems to be such on a big stage. And it's surprising to me to hear her say that, but it's something I could relate to as well, that you don't have to just go through life. You can be surprised as life unfolds, that there's something around the corner for you that's extraordinary and fantastic.
Yeah, I think for each of us, when we look at our life, it won't be our accumulations, but it'll be the most meaningful pieces that are connected end to end. And whether that's a thing that, as you're listening, is immediately relevant, you know what those pieces are, or you're like me and you're continuing to long to find those pieces, I just want you to be on the hunt. Lauren was very awake to the possibility of adoption. Thomas Rhett joined her in that. Even though he had other commitments to do at the time, they were one. And I think that's the beautiful thing, that we all have different life experiences, but we can be one in saying that it's really worth pursuing your purpose.
And another thing she said that stuck out to me, she said, as the Lord opens a door, walk through it. And to have that kind of character and that kind of courage is the other part of this life, at least this life that we're learning from Lauren and how she lives. It's not just being aware and awake and conscious about things, But when God speaks, when the door opens, to being the kind of person who walks through the door. And Bob, you're certainly someone who does that. You always walk through the door. And I guess I'm curious, in your life, is that something that you're conscious of? Is that just your personality, your instinct? What is that like for you?
I think for me, it is that anticipation that you referred to constantly be wondering and curious, what would happen if, and then you can complete the sentence, and it'll cause you to make telephone calls. It'll cause you to assemble leaders in another country that's at war. It'll cause you to say, I wonder what would happen if, and then not go to the dark side on that, but to think of the possibilities. But here's the deal. Forget going to do these big grand things. What is it that you heard Lauren say that caused you to think about an ambition that you had? Was there something in this last little bit of time that we've spent together that that just renewed for you something that you wanted to do? Could you take the next step? Don't take all the steps. Just take the next step, knowing that heaven is leaning over the rails, hoping you will.
And you all know how active Bob is on social media. So in this next week, if there's something that pings in your heart, a new idea, a new dream, a spark of inspiration, why don't you go onto one of his posts and share that? And not only will it probably encourage you and solidify what God is saying to you, but it's going to inspire the rest of us, the folks that are reading in and listening in to your life, that as you're chasing these things, as you're pursuing these dreams, as you're leaning forward and walking through the open doors, that we could be those kinds of people too. And we can kind of draft off your courage and what God's speaking to your life into our own.
Yeah, we're all just trying to figure this out. We're rookies at love and acceptance. We're rookies at going after our ambition. Yet, we've been around the sun a couple times. We know some things that work and some things that don't. Find a couple things that have in the past. Find that ambition that perhaps God had placed in your heart in the same way he did with Lauren. And just say, I'm going to do it. And your ambition might be across the street. I hope it is.
Yep. So thanks for joining in this week, and stay tuned for another episode next week of the Dream Big podcast with Bob Goff and friends.
The Dream Big podcast finally has a book to go along with it. Bob's new book, called Dream Big, is now available for pre-order. Go to thedreambigbook.com to pre-order your copy today.